Kerosene splashed against the dry barn wall, soaking deep into the weathered wood like blood into dead flesh. But the hand pouring it trembled, not from the cold night air, but from the knowledge that once the match was struck, the horses inside, and the winter feed would burn with it. Who had sent them to this forgotten wheat farm in the Arizona Territory, 1880, where the land itself seemed to have forgotten how to care? The wind rose hard, rattling loose boards. The sharp reek of kerosene drifted toward the dark house on the gust. From inside came a single creak of floorboards. Someone had woken. A tall silhouette filled the barn doorway. Moonlight caught the long, jagged scar running down the left side of his face. He stepped forward without hurry, rifle already rising, the barrel steady in the dark. His voice came low and rough, cutting clean through the wind. Put it down. Now. The kerosene can hit the ground with a hollow clink. The wind kept howling. No flame had been struck yet, but the land had gone very still, as if it were waiting to see which way the night would break. My name is Cole Harlan, 34 years old, and I have not had a real conversation with another human being in 9 days, not that I was counting. The notches on the barn post were for fence sections still needing wire, not for days of silence. But the silence had its own weight, the kind you stop noticing the way you stop noticing the smell of your own coat until something cuts through it, and then you realize how thick it had gotten. I came to Arizona Territory 8 years ago with a horse, a bedroll, $43, and the particular brand of stubbornness that West Texas plants in a man's chest somewhere around age 12 and never fully removes. The land out here does not care who you are. It does not care where you came from. It only asks one question: are you willing to work? I am. That much has not changed. What changed was my face. 4 years after I arrived, I was clearing the east field alone. Late August. The threshing machine arm slipped its bolt. Old equipment. My fault for not checking it the way I should have. The metal bar came loose and caught me across the left cheek, dragged down toward my collarbone before I got clear of it. I lay in the dirt for a long time after that. Long enough to watch the sun move 2 hand-widths across the sky. Long enough to wonder if anyone would come before the coyotes decided to. Tomas Reda found me. He was the chief of a small band of Chiricahua Apache, who had been moving through this part of the territory for 3 generations, before any white man drew lines on a map and called it anything. He came down from the ridge with 2 of his people, and they did not ask questions. They carried me back to their camp. For 11 days, the medicine people of his band worked on the wound while I drifted in and out of something that was not quite sleep and was not quite anything else. When I came back to myself, Tomas was sitting beside me. He handed me a cup of something that tasted like the inside of a pine tree. "Drink it," he said. I drank it. He looked at me with the particular patience of a man who has seen many things and stopped being surprised by most of them. "You are the man with the North Farm," he said. "I am," I said. "The land is still there. We watched it for you." That was Tomas Rueda. He did not make a ceremony of kindness. He did not need you to thank him. He just did the thing that needed doing, and then moved on to the next thing that needed doing. In the months after I healed, he taught me things that no one in West Texas had thought to teach me. How to read soil by the way it breaks between your fingers. Which direction the storms come from when the clouds stack up a certain way on the western ridge. How to look at a dry stream and know whether it ran 6 months ago or 6 years ago. He sat with me on the hill above my farm and talked about the land the way a man talks about someone he has known his whole life. With attention. With respect. When the bank came for my place 2 years later, said my notes were overdue, said the property had been assessed differently, said there were new terms I apparently had not read carefully enough. Tomas Rueda walked into that office with me. He did not say a word. He stood in the corner with his arms at his sides and looked at the bank manager with the steady, unhurried look of a man who has nowhere else to be and nothing to prove. The bank manager reconsidered the situation. I kept the farm. Tomas died 8 months ago, pneumonia. By the time word reached me and I rode out to where the band was camped near the Gila riverbed, it was already done. They had placed him the way his people place someone. Facing the mountains, he had looked at his whole life. I stood there for a while, then I rode home. I had met his daughter twice before. Once when she was maybe 17, and glanced at me once and then did not look at me again. Once at the edge of the camp when I brought supplies after a hard winter, and she came forward to receive them. And she looked at me for exactly one moment with dark eyes that had something sharp and careful behind them. And then she turned and went back to whatever she had been doing before. Her name was Wren. Her Apache name was Ahanu. It meant something like the one who laughs with the wind, which, from what little I had seen of her, seemed like either a very accurate description or a very ambitious one. I did not see her after Tomas died. Not until the afternoon in late October, when I rode back from checking the eastern fence and found her standing at my gate. She was not knocking, the gate was closed, and she was standing on the other side of it with one hand resting on the top rail and a small bundle of cloth tucked under her other arm. Everything she owned, I would come to understand, was in that bundle. She was wearing a plain cotton dress, the kind sold at trading posts, faded from too many washings. Her black hair was partly loose from a low knot. Her boots were worn through at the left heel and dusted white from a long road. Her eyes were red at the edges, not the red of someone who is crying now. The red of someone who stopped crying a long time ago and has been holding the rest of it back through sheer force of will ever since. I stopped my horse. I looked at her. She practiced this. Some part of my mind said, whatever she is about to say, she has practiced it. Wren, I said quietly. She looked at me. For a moment she did not speak. Like all the words she had rehearsed, had rearranged themselves into the wrong order. Then she said it, quickly, like releasing something she had been holding in her hands for a very long time, and was not entirely sure she wanted to let go. My father said you needed a wife. I did not laugh. I did not look away. I did not ask her to say it again, which is what a man does when he heard the thing perfectly clearly, but needs a moment to decide what to do with it. I stepped down from the horse, walked to the gate, opened it. He was right, I said. Come inside. She sat at my kitchen table, like someone who had decided to sit down and was now regretting the decision, but was too proud to stand back up. Her hands were flat on the table, not fidgeting, flat, like she was pressing something down. I put the coffee on. And I noticed, because you notice things when the house has been silent. And suddenly there is someone for 9 days, and there is someone else breathing in it, that she was looking at everything in the kitchen the way a person looks at a room they are trying to memorize. The stove, the shelf with the tin cups, the window above the basin, the back door with the coat hook that only held one coat for a long time, just one. I set a cup in front of her, sat down across the table. Tell me, I said. She told me. 18 months ago, she had taken work with a woman in Calder Springs, a widow named Mrs. Aldous, who owned the largest house on the main street and who needed someone to cook and clean and keep the household running. The pay was not good. The work was hard. There were days when the way certain visitors looked at her made her want to walk out the front door and not stop walking. She stayed because she needed the money, because her father had been ill and she was sending part of her wages back to help the band through the winter, because leaving would have felt like surrender, and she did not surrender easily. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Aldous called her into the parlor, in front of 2 other women, and told her that a silver pocket watch, the late Mr. Aldous's watch, kept on the bedroom dresser, was missing, and that Wren was the only person who had been in that room. She said she found it, Wren told me. Her voice was level, careful, but her hands on the table had gone from flat to tight. In the pocket of my cleaning apron. She looked straight at me. She did not find it. She said she found it. Those are not the same thing. No, I said. They are not. I did not take it, still looking straight at me. My father taught me that what a person takes without permission hollows them out from the inside. No watch is worth that. I believe you, I said. The words landed harder than I expected them to. Something moved across her face, a flicker, like a door opening 1 inch and then going still. People do not usually say that, she said. I know. I looked at my coffee cup. I have spent enough time on the wrong side of what people usually think to know. It is not a reliable place to start. She was quiet. By the end of the day, she said, every house in Calder Springs knew. My landlord asked me to leave by the end of the week. He said he could not have the reputation of the building. She paused, complicated. That was his word. She looked down at the table. I have nowhere to go back to. Cole, the band has moved further south. They are trying to stay out of the Army's reach. There is no room right now, and I have no money for another room. No references, no family, no one who will speak for me. She stopped, lifted her eyes back to mine. My father left something for you. He asked me to bring it. She reached into the bundle and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases. The kind of worn that means it has been opened and closed many times. She set it on the table between us and did not reach for her coffee. I picked it up. It was not addressed to Wren. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was Tomas Rita's, careful, deliberate. The letters slightly too large. The handwriting of a man who learned English late and practiced it longer than he ever let on, Cole Harlan. If my daughter has brought this to you, then I am gone. I knew this winter would be my last one. I did not tell her because she would have spent it worrying instead of living, and Wren worries enough. I am asking you something I have no right to ask, but a man in my position has stopped having room for pride. Look after her. Not because she cannot look after herself. She can, better than anyone I have known, and I include myself. But the world she is living in now has rules that work against her at every step. She will not ask anyone for help. She would sleep in the road first. She would go hungry first. You know what it is to have nothing and have to start over. You know what it is to have someone stand beside you when you had no reason to expect it. I am not asking you to love her. I am asking you to give her ground to stand on. The rest belongs to the two of you, and to whatever time decides to do with it. Tomas Ruidai read it twice, folded it, set it back on the table between us. Wren had been watching my face the entire time. He did not tell you it was addressed to me, she said. No. Her breath came out slow. He told me he was going to visit an old friend. I thought he meant Charlie Cutter from the Millhaven Trading Post. He came out here 4 months before he died, I said. Sat in that chair under the juniper tree in the yard. We talked for 2 hours. He didn't tell me he was sick. He wouldn't have, she said. Quiet. Certain. He wouldn't want you to just what you said to him because of it. She pressed her lips together. He planned this, she said. Not angry. Something more complicated than angry. He planned all of it, and he didn't tell me, because he knew I would fight it. You would have, I said. I would have. She looked out the window at the dry yard, the well, the dead grass beyond the fence. I am fighting it right now, I know. Silence. The wind moved through the gap under the back door. A small, dry sound. What are you proposing? She said. I told her marriage. Legal, registered, filed at the county seat. She would have my name and the rights that came with it under territorial law. A room, a roof, legal standing. My name on any document she needed to sign. The protection the law gave a wife and only a wife in 1880 in Arizona territory. In return, she would help with the farm, the garden, the market runs, the household accounts, which I had been managing with a system that could only be described as hopeful, her own room, her own life. Nobody forcing anything that was not agreed on first. She looked at me for a long time. What do you get out of this? She said. Besides more trouble. I thought about it honestly. Someone to talk to, I said. And maybe a house that stops feeling like a place I am just waiting in. She blinked. Like the answer had arrived in the wrong order. "I am not a piece of property," she said, "to be transferred from one man to another because my father arranged it. I agree with you completely." She blinked again. That was clearly not the answer she had prepared her response to. She said no the first time quietly, without looking at me. She stood up from the table and said she would sleep in the barn if I would allow it, and look for other arrangements in the morning. I said fine. Showed her where the spare blankets were kept. The second no came the next morning. She had woken before me. Something I would come to understand was simply who she was, and by the time I came downstairs the coffee was on, and eggs were in the pan, and the kitchen smelled like something a kitchen is supposed to smell like, which it had not in a considerable amount of time. Yet she set the plate in front of me and said she had thought about it through the night, and she was grateful, but she could not accept the arrangement. I said I understood. She looked at me like she did not trust that answer. The third no came after lunch. She had spent the morning walking the farm. Not asked to, not directed. Just walking it, looking at it, the way she had been looking at the kitchen the night before. Like she was memorizing it. Or measuring it. I found her in the garden on her knees, between the bean rows, pulling dead growth away from the plants with the focused efficiency of someone who cannot be in a place and leave it worse than she found it. "These face the wrong direction," she said, without looking up. "The afternoon shade from the fence post is blocking their best light hours, and the corn at the south end is competing with the squash for the same water table. They should not be that close." I looked at the garden I had been tending for 4 years. "I did not know that," I said. "No," she said, "you did not." She kept pulling dead stems. "My mother taught me," she said after a while. She could grow things in places that had no business growing anything. She said every plant has a preference. You have to pay attention to what it is. A pause. "Nobody taught you to pay attention to the garden." "Tomas taught me to pay attention to the wheat," I said. We never got to the garden. Something shifted in her expression when I said his name like that. "Not your father. Not the chief. Just Tomas. The name the people who knew him used." She did not say anything. But she heard it. That afternoon she told me no again. Stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the front room, and said she had given it serious thought, and she still could not accept it. I said I understood. She went to the room she was sleeping in. I went back to fixing the pump handle. The fourth conversation happened after supper. She sat down across from me, with her hands flat on the table again, and looked at me with the expression of someone who has been arguing with themselves for 24 hours. And has finally arrived somewhere they were not expecting to land. "The law in this territory," she said, "does not give me options. As a woman, as Apache, as someone without papers or money or anyone to speak for me." A pause. "You know this." "I know it," I said. "If I married you, if we filed the paperwork, I would have legal standing. The same standing any wife has. More than you have now," I said. "Which is close to none." She looked at the candle between us on the table. "I want it understood," she said, "that I am not doing this from weakness. I am doing this because I have looked at every other door and they are all closed, and this is the one door that opens, and I am choosing to walk through it with my eyes open." "Understood," I said. "I want it understood that I am not a dependent. I am not a charity case. I work for what I have, and I will work for what I have here. Understood, and I want it understood that whatever this is, we decide together. Not you deciding for me, not me deciding alone. Together or we do not decide." Agreed. She looked at the candle for another moment. Then she looked at me. "My father trusted you," she said, like she was setting something valuable down on the table and was not entirely sure she wanted to let go of it. "He did not trust easily. And he trusted you." "I know," I said. "I'll try to deserve it." She was quiet. Outside, the wind moved through the dry grass with that low, steady sound that the Arizona night makes when October is turning the corner into something harder. "When?" she said, We drove into Calder Springs the next morning. I had the paperwork ready. I had shaved carefully for the first time in 2 months. I had put on the white shirt that still smelled faintly of cedar from the trunk, where my mother used to keep winter things. The black trousers without grease stains. The boots I actually cleaned. It was not much, but it was what I had. When I came downstairs, Wren was already in the front room. She was wearing a dress I had not seen before. Deep blue cotton with small white stitching along the collar. Simple. A little old-fashioned. She turned when she heard my boots on the floor, and her eyes moved over the clean shirt, the shaved face, and something in her expression shifted before she could stop it. Then she looked at the dress she was wearing and smoothed the front of it. It was my mother's, she said, not explaining. Just saying. I could tell by the way she touched the fabric, like it might not still be there if she pressed too hard. You look, it is nothing special, she said quickly. It's enough, I said. And I meant it. She looked at me for one more second. Then she picked up her bundle from the chair and walked to the door. The office of Judge Greel was at the south end of Calder Springs Main Street, between the assay office and a dry goods store with a faded painted sign. We walked in together. Greel was a man in his mid-50s with the permanent expression of someone who has been mildly inconvenienced by everything that has ever happened to him. He looked up from his desk, looked at me, looked at Wren, looked at the paperwork I set in front of him. His expression did not change. That was the tell. When a man's expression does not change, it means he already decided something before you opened your mouth and is now organizing his reasons. He set the papers back down. He said something about established community standards. Something about the complexity of certain arrangements under territorial law. Something about his position requiring him to consider broader implications. I listened to all of it. Then I told him, in the plainest terms I knew, what he could do with the broader implications. We walked out. Wren stood on the boardwalk in front of the judge's office, with her arms at her sides, and the morning sun coming at a low angle across the street, and she was doing something I was already beginning to recognize, going completely still on the outside, because she did not want to show what was happening on the inside. I told you, she said, not bitterly, just as a fact that had now been confirmed. You did, I said. It will be the same at the next office, not in Millhaven. She looked at me. That is 38 miles. 38 miles, I said. Cole, Wren, she stared at me. I walked to the wagon and climbed up and picked up the reins. She stood on the boardwalk for 3 more seconds. Then she walked to the wagon and climbed up beside me. 38 miles of Arizona territory in October is not a landscape that encourages small talk. The land out there is too big and too honest. Red rock and pale dust and scrub cedar and the kind of sky that makes you feel correctly sized. A man in that country has 2 choices. He can sit with the silence, or he can fill it with something real. We sat with it for a while. Then, somewhere around the dry riverbed crossing, maybe 15 miles out, Wren said, "The scar." I kept my eyes on the horses. "What about it? Does it still hurt?" "Not the way it used to." She was quiet for a moment. "My father said you would not let anyone look at it for the first year." I glanced at her. "He told you that. He told me many things about you." A pause. "He said you were the most stubborn man he had met in 20 years of dealing with stubborn men. He meant that as a criticism. He meant it as a compliment," she said. "He had no patience for men who quit." The horses moved steadily. The red rock walls on either side of the road threw long shadows in the morning light. "What else did he tell you?" I said. She looked out at the canyon passing by. "He said you knew how to be quiet without needing to fill the quiet. That is a compliment where I come from. It was one where he came from, too." Another stretch of silence. But different. The kind that has something in it now instead of just absence. "He came out to the farm," I said, 4 months before he died. He sat under the juniper tree for 2 hours. We talked about the wheat, About whether the east pasture could support another 2 cows. About a book I was reading. I looked at the road ahead. He did not tell me he was sick. No, she said. He would not. Why not? She thought about it. Because, if you knew, she said, you would have been kind in the way people are kind to someone who is dying. And he didn't want that. He wanted you to talk to him the same way you always had. I did not say anything for a while. He was a good man, I said finally. Yes, she said. He was. The canyon opened out into a wide, pale valley. The sky ahead was very blue and very empty. My mother died when I was 12, Ren said. To the valley, not to me. After that, it was just the 2 of us. He was not always easy. He expected a great deal. He did not apologize when he was wrong. He just changed course and acted like the change was always the plan. Sounds familiar? I said, not a smile. But the place where a smile lives when it has not decided yet. He taught me to read in 2 languages, she said. He taught me to track game, and to set a broken bone, and to look at a plant, and know whether it was sick or just dormant. He taught me that the difference between a hard life and a ruined life is whether you let the hard parts convince you that you have no choices left. She stopped. He was a very good father, she said it carefully. Past tense. Like she was still getting used to the weight of it, I know, I said. We rode in quiet the rest of the way to Millhaven. But it was a different quiet than we had started with. Judge Eli Drummond's office was at the end of Millhaven's shorter Main Street, past the telegraph office, and a hardware store, and a building that had been 3 different things in the past 5 years, based on the faded painted names visible under each other on the front boards. Drummond himself was in his late 60s, with white hair and the permanent squint of a man who has spent 40 years reading documents in bad light. He had a framed photograph of Coach Eyes on the wall behind his desk. He had a letter in a frame beside it. The signature, from where I stood, looked like it might belong to the translator who had worked with Geronimo in the treaty talks. He looked at us when we came in, looked at the paperwork I set on his desk. Read it once, then he looked up, not at me. At Ren. You understand what you're signing, he said. I read English, she said. And I understand contracts. He looked at her for another moment, then back at the papers. Then he picked up his pen. Sign here, he said. Both of you. There were no flowers, no music, no guests except his deputy, a young man named Porter, who chewed his thumbnail throughout the entire proceedings and seemed deeply uncertain about his role in history. The rings, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a plain silver band, worn smooth at the edges, my mother's. I had taken it out of the cedar trunk that morning for the first time in 4 years, and held it in my hand for a while before putting it in my pocket. Ren looked at it. It was hers, I said quietly. I do not have much left of her. If you do not mind. She held out her left hand. Her fingers were still. Her eyes were on the ring, not on me, until it touched her finger. Then she looked up, and her eyes were wet, just at the edges. Just enough. She looked away before I could say anything. Drummond cleared his throat. You may kiss if you wish. Ren went still. I saw it in her shoulders, the held breath. I leaned down slowly. Gave her every moment she needed to change her mind. She did not change her mind. I pressed my mouth to hers, for no longer than a second, the briefest possible contact. A question more than a statement. When I straightened, she was looking up at me, with her eyes slightly wider than usual, and an expression I could not read. Porter stopped, chewing his thumbnail long enough to clap twice, realized no one was joining him, and went back to his thumbnail. Drummond looked at me over his glasses. Treat her right, he said, like it was simple. I intend to, I said. On the way back, Ren sat with her hands in her lap and looked at the ring. She turned it slowly with her thumb, like she was checking that it was real, like she expected it to not be there. If she looked away, the 38 miles home felt shorter than the 38 miles out. I do not know exactly why. Maybe because the silence had changed into something else somewhere in the middle of the canyon. Maybe because something had been decided, and the deciding takes more weight than the decision. Around mile 20, I said. Hungry? She looked over at me like she had momentarily forgotten that food was a thing that existed. A little. I have bread and cheese and some salted ham. I am not much of a cook, but I have not managed to poison myself yet, which I consider a reasonable standard. Something unlocked in her face. A small laugh. Real. Short. The first real sound of relief I had heard from her since she appeared at my gate. I can cook, she said. My mother taught me. When my father was sick, I made his meals every day. She stopped. The sadness came back through, just for a moment. The kind that lives just under the surface in people who have been through a real loss. Not dramatic, just there, a watermark. I did not offer comfort. I did not reach for the right words. I just reached across the seat and rested my hand over hers for a moment. She did not pull away. When we turned onto the dirt road that led back to the north farm, the afternoon sun was laying gold across the wheat field and the old red barn, and the juniper tree at the edge of the yard threw its long shadow toward the house. Wren looked out at all of it. It is bigger than I remembered, she said. Too big for one person, I said. I looked at her. Not anymore. She did not answer. But her hand tightened, just slightly, around the fabric of her mother's dress. Inside, I showed her the upstairs room, my mother's room. I had not gone into it much in the years since she died. The wooden bed, the small dresser, the old mirror gone slightly dark at the edges, the chair by the window that looked out over the wheat field to the east. On top of the dresser, I had put a mason jar, with wild sage and dried yellow desert flowers. I had gathered that morning before she woke up. Wren stood in front of them for a long time. I suddenly felt foolish, like a man who is not used to these things and has done something that makes that obvious. I do not know what. I started. Thank you, she said. She was looking at the flowers. Not at me, not just for the room, she said. For making me feel like I am not something that got left behind. I did not know how to answer that, so I only nodded. And I left her there with her mother's dress and her small bundle and the mason jar of desert flowers in a room that had been empty long enough. We ate our first real meal together that evening. She moved through the kitchen with a confidence she had not shown anywhere else yet. Like the kitchen was territory she understood the rules of. The stove, the shelf, the cutting board, she found her way around all of it without asking. In 20 minutes, there were eggs, dried herbs, and sliced salt pork, toasted bread, with the honey I kept in the back cupboard, tomatoes from the garden that she had apparently assessed and found acceptable on her afternoon walk, and coffee that smelled like it had been made by someone who believed coffee deserved to be taken seriously. I sat down, took one bite, then another. I did not speak for a long time. Wren watched me from across the table, with the expression of someone who is trying to determine whether the silence is good or bad. Is it? It is the best thing I have eaten in 4 years, I said. Possibly longer. I am embarrassed by what I have been feeding myself. She pressed her lips together, trying not to look pleased, failing slightly. We talked while we ate. Not about the farm, not about the arrangement. Not about any of the things that still needed to be figured out. She told me about her mother. I told her about mine. Fever, 1874. 3 months after I arrived in the territory, too far to go back in time. We did not say much after that, but the silence between us felt different than the silence of the past 9 days. It felt like two people recognizing the same shape of something in each other without having the right word for it yet. Later, we climbed the stairs. She stopped at the top of the landing. Your room? She said. Right. I nodded toward the door on the right side. Yours is on the left. You can lock if you want. There is a bolt on the inside. She nodded, put her hand on the doorknob, paused. Good night, Cole, she said. Good night. Wren, she hesitated. A faint color in her cheeks. Good night. A breath. Husband. The word landed in the hallway between us like something made of glass, fragile and somehow exact. She slipped into her room before I could answer. I stood in the hallway for longer than I needed to, and for the first time in 9 days, in many more days than 9, if I was being honest with myself. The house did not feel like a place I was just waiting in. It felt like a place where something was beginning. The next morning I woke before the light and lay still for a moment. Listening, the house was quiet, but it was a different quiet. There was someone else breathing behind the door on the left side of the hallway. Someone else's weight on the floorboards when she moved, which she did. Quietly, sometime before I heard the sound of the stove. I came downstairs to find her already in the kitchen, coffee on, eggs in the pan. The smell of something being done properly. I stood in the doorway. She turned and saw me, and something in her expressions said she had been awake long enough to have thought about several things and had arrived at a version of the morning she was comfortable with. "Go wash up," she said. Before I could argue, I went. When I came back, she was standing at the window above the basin, not cooking, just looking out at the yard, at the juniper tree, at the long shadow it threw across the dry grass in the early light. She did not hear me come in, and for a moment I stood in the doorway and watched her look at the tree, the way you look at something you are still deciding how to feel about, like it holds a question you have not fully formed yet. Then she turned, saw me, went back to the stove without a word. I sat down. The coffee was already poured. She had left it at my place before she went to the window. I did not say anything about that, but I thought about it for the rest of the morning, and I thought about what Tomas Rueda had said to me, sitting under that juniper tree 4 months ago, before I knew he was sick, before any of this existed yet. He had said, "Cole, you are a man who is very good at enduring. I wonder sometimes if you have forgotten that enduring and living are not the same thing." I had not understood what he was pointing at. I was starting to understand now, 3 weeks in. And Cole Harlan had developed a problem, the farm kind, not the fence kind, not even the bank kind, though that was coming. And he knew it the way a man knows weather, in his bones before the clouds arrive. No, the problem was this. He kept finding reasons to walk past the garden that did not need checking. The garden that Wren was managing with the focused competence of someone who had decided the garden was her territory now and would be run accordingly. The garden that was, by any honest measure, doing better in 3 weeks than it had in 4 years under his care. He checked the south fence post nearest the garden. 3 times, same post, same fence, same result. It was fine. It had always been fine. It would continue to be fine. He asked if she needed water. Twice, while the bucket was already full. He asked if the tomatoes were ready. She looked at him. Then at the tomatoes, which were green. Cole, yes, they are green, right. Green means not ready. I know that, do you? He went back to the barn. The horses looked at him without sympathy. She woke before him every morning. He had accepted this. He had also accepted that fighting her for the kitchen was as a battle he would lose immediately, and with no dignity. So he surrendered the kitchen without terms and considered it the wisest decision he had made in recent memory. What he had not accepted, what he was still working on, was the way the house had rearranged itself around her presence without asking his permission. The herbs she hung to dry from the rafter above the kitchen window. The way she had moved the second chair on the porch so it faced southeast instead of south. The small bowl of creek stones she had set on the windowsill above the basin. Smooth ones. Gray and red, and one that was almost white. He had not asked about the stones. He wanted to, he didn't, because asking about the stones felt like the kind of question that meant something. And he was not entirely sure he was ready for what it meant. It's just stones. It's just a bowl. You are a 34-year-old man with a functioning brain, and you are standing here thinking about a bowl of creek stones. He went to check the east fence line, which was also fine. The evenings were what got him, after supper, which was always better than anything he could have produced alone. a fact he had stopped being embarrassed about and moved directly into gratitude. They would sit, her with the household accounts, which she had taken over with the expression of someone cleaning up after a small disaster that nobody had told them about. Him with whatever book was current, which lately he could not focus on for more than 3 pages at a stretch. Not because the books were bad, because she was on the other side of the table. The first evening she had looked up from the accounts and said, flatly, Cole, yes, what is this entry? The 14th of August. $12.30 listed as miscellaneous farm needs. That sounds right. What was it? Various things. Cole, a hat. She looked at him. You spent $12.30 on a hat. It was a good hat. Where is this hat? The brim blew off the south ridge in September. She wrote something in the margin of the accounts. He suspected it was not complimentary. From now on, she said, you tell me before you spend anything over $2. I own this farm. Yes, she said. And now we can both own it poorly or both own it well. And I prefer the second option. He looked at his book. She went back to the accounts. And he turned the page 4 times without reading it. She taught him about the planting cycles on a Tuesday, not formally, not like a lesson. She was in the garden checking root depth on the winter squash, and she started talking in the way she talked when she was thinking out loud and had momentarily forgotten to keep the thinking on the inside. The Chiricahua had tracked moon cycles for planting for longer than anyone in Calder Springs had been alive, she said. Not mysticism, observation. The gravitational pull that moved ocean tides also moved moisture through soil. Root crops went in during the dark of the moon when moisture pulled downward. Leafy things went in during the waxing when it pulled up. Cole stood at the edge of the garden and listened. My grandfather, she said, could tell what week of the month it was by looking at a field. Not the calendar week, the true week, the one the land is working on. You can do that, he said. She considered. Mostly, she said. When I pay attention, your father could do it. She went still for just a moment. Yes, she said. Better than me. Then she went back to checking the squash. And he stood there thinking about Tomas Rueda, sitting on the hill, above this farm, and talking about the land the way a man talks about someone he loves. He sent her here, Cole thought. And he sent her here with everything he knew. The knowledge didn't die with him. He passed it through her. He did not say this out loud, but he thought it clearly enough that it felt like it deserved to be said someday. He taught her the accounts on Thursday evenings. He had learned record-keeping from a cattle boss in Texas who believed that a man who couldn't read his own numbers was a man who couldn't be trusted with other people's cattle. The system was not elegant, but it was consistent. And Wren, once she understood the structure of it, moved through it faster than he had expected. She read English well. Better than well, actually. She read it the way someone reads a language they learn to love, not just use. Who taught you? He asked. The second Thursday. She was working through the September produce sales, correcting a column he had misadded. My father. First, she did not look up. Then a missionary school in Tucson for 2 years, then myself, mostly. My father had books. He traded for them whenever he could. What kind of books? Now looked up. Slight suspicion. Like she was not sure the question was sincere. History, she said. Mostly American history. He wanted to understand how the country thought about itself. A pause. He found it instructive. Instructive how? He said a country's history books tell you less about what happened then than about what the country needs to believe happened. She looked back at the accounts. He thought that was worth knowing. Cole sat with that for a moment. That is a very precise observation, he said. He was a very precise man. She found his arithmetic error in the October column and circled it without comment. He looked at it. I was close, he said. You were $6 short. That is close. That is $6. He looked at his book, which he was not reading. He turned the page anyway. The chores had organized themselves without discussion. He did not know exactly when it happened. Somewhere in the second week, the day had developed its own logic. He was up before light and out to the barn by the time she came downstairs. She had breakfast ready by the time he came back. She took the garden in the mornings, the accounts in the evenings. He took the fields and the fences and the equipment. But things overlapped. She came out to watch him work the horses one afternoon. Watched the younger one, the one with the left front concern, being walked in a slow circle. He favors it less, she said, getting better. Cole kept his eyes on the horse. Your father ever have horses? We had two when I was young, she said. A gray mare and a roan that my father said was the most disagreeable animal he had ever met, which he said with a great deal of affection. Cole smiled. The disagreeable ones are usually the smartest, he said. That is what my father said. A pause. He said the same thing about people. Cole looked at her. She was watching the horse, not him, but her face had softened in the way it did when she was not going to say the thing she was thinking. He went back to walking the circle and thought, again, because he had been thinking it with increasing frequency for about 10 days now, about how the house felt at night versus how it had felt before. The specific quality of knowing someone else was in it. Not just in it, but of it. Like she had been there longer than she had stopped it. He told himself, this is an arrangement. A practical arrangement between two people in difficult circumstances. You offered her ground to stand on. That is what this is. He walked the horse another circle, a bowl of creek stones. Said the unhelpful part of his brain. He ignored it. He found it on a Thursday morning. Wren was in the garden. He was clearing the old storage room. The one he had been meaning to clear for 2 years. The one with rusted tools and old ledgers and boxes of things he had been avoiding deciding about. Behind a tin of linseed oil. Pressed against the back wall, a folded document, old paper. The kind that gets soft at the creases from being handled many times. He opened it carefully. It was a land transfer record, dated 1861. 19 years ago, seller, Broken Ash. Listed as representative of a Chiricahua Apache band. 312 acres of grazing land in the southern valley below the Gila Ridge. Priest paid $35. Witness, Ward Beckett. Cole read it again. Then he stood in the storage room doorway and looked at the yard. At Wren in the garden, kneeling between the bean rows, pulling dead growth with the focused patience that was simply who she was. He went to her. He did not speak immediately. He handed her the document and let her read it. She read it once. Her hands were very still on the paper. Then she read it again. Broken Ash, she said. Quiet. Careful. He was my grandfather's age. By 1861, he did not know what season it was. He did not always know his own name. Cole crouched down beside her at the garden's edge. He could not have understood what he was signing. Wren said, no, this land. She looked at the document. This is the valley below the South Ridge. This is the land Beckett used as the foundation for everything he built here. His collateral with the bank. His leverage with the county, yes, Cole said. He bought land from a man who did not know what land was. She folded the document once, precisely. And he built his whole empire on it. Cole waited. My father knew, she said. Not a question, I think so. He kept a copy somewhere. He always kept copies. She looked up. Her eyes were steady, dark. Something moving behind them that was not grief, and was not anger exactly, but was the thing that comes after both, when a person has had time to understand something fully. He sent me here, with the marriage letter. He sent me to a man he trusted. He left the document where it could be found. A long breath. He did not send me here to be saved, she said. He sent me here because he knew we would need each other to do this. Cole looked at the document in her hands. This is fraud, he said. If we can prove Broken Ash's condition at the time, who proves it? She looked at him directly. To whom? In front of which judge? You and I, Cole. That is who we are in this. An Apache woman and a man with a scar that people in this town have decided to read as a warning sign. Her voice was even, not bitter. Just accurate. Beckett has the bank. He has the county land office. He has Judge Greel. He does not have the circuit judge. The circuit judge is 6 weeks out. Cole looked at her. Then we spend 6 weeks building something solid enough that the circuit judge cannot ignore it. She held the document and looked at him for a long moment. "You are very stubborn," she said. "Your father called it a compliment. My father," she said, "was not always right." But she folded the document and set it inside her apron pocket. And that was the beginning of it. They went to Calder Springs on Saturday, the market, weekly. Cole had been going alone for 4 years, setting up the produce stall before the sun was fully up, and keeping his hat low, and speaking to people in the transaction voice, the one that covers exactly what needs to be covered and nothing more. This time Wren came. She set up the herb display herself, the dried sage, the rosemary, the small bundles of something she had gathered from the hillside that she said was used by her people for headaches, and that she had tied with a strip of blue cloth because, she said, people buy things more readily when they look like they were made by someone who cared about them. She was not wrong. By mid-morning they had sold twice what Cole usually moved. But that was not the part he was paying attention to. He was paying attention to the eyes. People stopped at the stall and looked at the herbs, and then at Wren, and then at Cole, and then at the herbs again. Some stopped looking at the herbs entirely and just looked. Some did it with curiosity. Some with a kind of blank expression that is not blankness, but is a feeling that has decided to disguise itself. A woman he recognized as the bank manager's wife walked past, looked at Wren, then at Cole, then back at Wren. "Well," she said, and walked on. Wren arranged the rosemary bundles. She said, "Well," Cole said. She said, "Enough," Wren said. 3 stalls down, 2 women were talking behind their hands. Cole caught words, arrangement, Apache, poor man. Don't know what he was thinking. He kept his face neutral. Wren kept her face neutral, 'cause she had been doing this her whole life. And he was just learning to. Beckett appeared at 11. Not to buy anything. He appeared the way powerful men appear in public spaces. Not walking through the crowd so much as allowing the crowd to rearrange around him. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired. The kind of handsome that becomes something harder with age. His coat cost more than most of the people at this market made in a month. He stopped at the stall, looked at the herbs. At Wren, at Cole. "Cole," he said pleasantly. "Colonel," Cole said. "Congratulations are in order, I understand." He looked at Wren with the expression of a man examining something he has already priced. "Mrs. Harlan, your father was a remarkable man. I am sorry for your loss." Wren looked at him, said nothing, which, Cole was learning, was one of her most effective tools. "Business looks good," Beckett said, glancing at the stall. "It is," Cole said. "Good." A pause. A smile that did not reach his eyes. "I do hope the situation is sustainable. Given the current arrangements at the bank," he looked at Cole. "I trust you received the letter." "I did." Cole said, "Good. I would hate for things to become complicated." He looked at Wren one more time. "You know, the territory is in a state of flux right now. Certain situations require careful navigation. I hope you both understand that." He tipped his hat. He walked away. Cole stared after him. "He knows," Wren said. "He suspects." Cole said, "If he knew, we would not be having a pleasant conversation at the market. The document, or something near it. He is testing what we have." Cole looked at the back of Beckett's retreating coat. "He is also telling us something, that he can make this very difficult," she said. "That he already has. The bank letter arrived on Tuesday. $1,500. 30 days, in 1880, on a wheat farm in October." Cole sat at the kitchen table with the letter for a long time. Long enough that the coffee went cold. Long enough that Wren came and read it over his shoulder and sat down across from him, without being asked. 30 days, she said. 30 days. The circuit judge is 6 weeks. I know. She was quiet. Then we need something, she said, that slows him down. Something that puts him in a position where he cannot quietly make us go away. Cole looked at the letter. We need more than the document. We need more than the document, she agreed. We need other people. He looked up, and she looked back at him with the expression of someone who has been working on an idea for longer than she has been showing. Lark came 3 days later. He appeared at the edge of the farm just before dusk. Cole had seen him from the field for the better part of 2 days, a shape keeping to the tree line, not approaching, not retreating. Patient, watchful. On the 3rd day, Cole left the gate open. An hour later, Lark walked through it. He was 21, lean. Watchful in the bondy way of someone who had been paying attention his whole life. Because the stakes of not paying attention had always been too high. He wore a cavalry jacket he had probably traded for, moccasins, and his hair tied back with a cord of blue beads that Cole recognized. They were the beads Tomas had worn on his wrist. He had given them to this boy. Wren saw him from the garden and stopped moving completely. Then she said his name, the way you say the name of someone you were not sure you would see again. Lark. He came forward, and they spoke in Apache for several minutes. Their voices rose and fell. At one point she put her hand on his face the way you do with someone you love, and are afraid has changed while you were not looking. When she turned back to Cole, her face had done something complicated. This is Lark, she said. My father took him in when he was 10. He is like a brother. Lark looked at Cole direct, measuring. Not hostile. Wren speaks well of you, he said. His English was careful and precise. She does not speak well of many people. I'll take it, Cole said. Lark nodded once. Then he told them why he had come. Beckett had been working for 3 months, quietly, through back channels with the territorial administration, to have the Chiricahua band formally classified as uncooperative. Not hostile, not yet, but the step before hostile. A designation that would allow closer military oversight, that would restrict movement. That would, in 3 or 4 stages that each looked reasonable on paper, end in the band being removed from the land entirely. 3 elders, Lark said. They were there. When Broken Ash signed. They remember his condition. They would testify. Cole and Wren looked at each other. In front of the circuit judge, Cole said. If the circuit judge will hear Apache testimony, Lark said. Judge Harrow will, Cole said. I have heard him spoken of. He is not Greel. Lark was quiet for a moment. Beckett is doing this, he said, because if the band is gone, if the people who remember are gone, there is no one left who can speak to what happened with Broken Ash. He is not just taking land, he is removing witnesses. The kitchen was very quiet. Wren was looking at the table. Cole was looking at her. Wren, he said. She looked up. I know what you are thinking, he said. That you need to go back. To be there, I do need to go back, and if you go back now, we lose the only chance we have to stop him. Not just from us. From I know that. She pressed her hands flat on the table. I know. She looked at Lark. He looked at her with the expression of a younger brother who has been told hard things before and has learned to receive them without flinching. I cannot come back right now, she said. What we are doing here. It connects to what is happening to the band. If I come back, we lose both. If I stay and finish this, there may be a way through. Lark's jaw tightened, and if there is not, then I will have tried everything. A pause. That is all I can promise. He looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at Cole. The look said, plainly and without ambiguity, whatever she is to you, you are responsible for her well-being, and I am keeping a ledger, and you will not like the entry if you let me down. I'll be watching, he said. He meant it precisely. He stayed for supper. He ate without speaking much, and watched the way Wren moved in the kitchen and the way Cole sat at the table, and Cole had the distinct sensation of being assessed by someone whose judgment, if offered, would be worth having. Lark slept in the barn that night. In the morning, Cole found him already working, mending a section of fence on the west side that had been on Cole's list for 2 weeks. He did not ask permission, he did not explain. He just worked. Cole picked up the other end of the wire and worked beside him. They did not speak much. But by the time they came in for the midday meal, something had been established. Not friendship exactly. Something earlier than friendship. The recognition that they were both, in their different ways, trying to do right by the same person. Which was enough to start with. The storm came on a Wednesday. It had been building since dawn. The sky, that particular yellow-gray, that means the weather is not deciding whether to turn, but only deciding how much. By noon, the wind was strong enough to push against man's chest. By afternoon, it was moving through the wheat field in waves, bending the stalks in long shivers. Cole and Wren worked without talking. She knew what needed doing, and she did it. He knew what needed doing, and he did it. They moved around each other in the narrowing yard like two people who had been reading the same weather for years instead of weeks. She brought in wood. He covered the hay. She filled every container in the kitchen with water. He checked the barn doors and the latches, and the tarp over the equipment. The rain started at dark, real rain. The kind that does not so much fall as arrive. All at once. Hard, like the sky had been holding it and simply let go. Cole was in the barn, tying down the last corner of the equipment tarp, when he heard it. The chicken coop door. The wind had gotten under it, slammed it open. Several hens were already out. He could hear them in the rain. That panicked sound a bird makes when it has found itself somewhere it did not intend to be. He shouted toward the house. "Leave them. Get inside. I'll handle it." He was already moving toward the coop when he saw her. She had come out the back door before he finished shouting. No coat. Her hair already flat against her face in the rain. One hen, under her arm and reaching for a second one, near the base of the old juniper tree at the yard's edge. "Wren, leave it. Get inside." She caught the second hen. And then Cole heard the sound. He had heard it before, once years ago, in a windstorm that took the corner of a barn. The sound of dead wood under pressure finally deciding it has had enough. A deep, splintering crack, not breaking slowly. Breaking all at once, he did not think. He ran. The branch was large. Old wood. Dry all summer, and now saturated with rain and swollen with it, and the weight was too much, and it came down fast. Faster than it looked. Straight toward the spot where she was crouched with both hands full of panicked bird. Cole hit her sideways, not gently. There was no room for gently. They went into the mud together, and the branch came down behind them with a sound like the earth splitting, and the impact shook the ground through Cole's whole body. And for a half-second, everything was just rain and mud, and the ringing quiet that follows something that almost happened. He got his arms up, found the ground, pushed up on both hands. She was under him. Breathing hard, eyes wide, still, somehow, impossibly, holding the chicken against her chest. He was shaking. He had not noticed until now. His voice came out louder than he meant it to. Louder and rawer, and with none of the careful evenness he had been maintaining for 3 weeks. "Are you out of your mind?" She looked up at him. Rain pouring down both their faces. "I didn't want them to die," she said. "Chickens?" His hands were shaking on the mud on either side of her. "Wren. Chickens can be replaced." She opened her mouth. "You cannot," he said. The words came out before he finished deciding to say them. Too fast. Too clear. No way to take them back. Too honest. She looked at him. The rain kept coming. The branch was 2 feet to their right. In the dark, it was a massive shadow. If it had fallen 1 second earlier, if he had been 1 step slower, he became aware, suddenly and without room to avoid it, that his face was very close to hers, that her hair was spread in the mud around her head, that her eyes, even in the dark and the rain, were doing the thing they did when she was thinking something she had not decided to say yet. "Cole," she said, soft, his name like that, and he kissed her, not careful, not brief. Not the kind of kiss at the courthouse in Milt Haven that was a question asked politely. This was not polite. This was 3 weeks of walking past the garden, of turning the same page 4 times, of looking up from a book and finding her already looking and both of them looking away, of checking the south fence post 3 times and knowing exactly why. This was relief and fear, and something that had been building quietly, a house that used to be empty. She kissed him back, almost immediately. Her free hand, the one not holding the chicken, came up and caught the collar of his soaked jacket and held on. And for those few seconds, the rain and the branch, and the mud, and the missing bank payment, and Beckett and all of it, was somewhere else. Only this was here. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard, both still in the mud. The chicken was still inexplicably in her arms. She looked at him. He looked at her. "We need to get inside," he said. His voice was not entirely steady. "Yes," she said. Neither of them moved immediately. Then they moved inside, the wood stove, the lamp. The warmth of a room when the rain is fighting the windows outside and losing. Wren stood in the middle of the kitchen, soaked through. Her hair a disaster, the chicken still, under her arm. She looked at it. It looked at her. An arrangement was made. She set it in the corner behind the wood box with a feed tin over it. Cole was standing at the other side of the kitchen, being equally wet and considerably less composed than he had been at any point in the past 3 weeks. "You need dry clothes," he said, trying for practical, landing slightly short. "So do you," she said. He went to the chest by the front room door, found her one of his old flannel shirts, the only thing in the house large enough to work as a dress. She looked at it. He turned to the wall. He heard the wet fabric hit the floor. He was very careful about keeping his eyes on the wall. "Done," she said. He turned around. She was wearing his flannel shirt. It came to her knees. Her wet hair was loose around her shoulders. The lamplight caught the ring on her left hand. She was looking at the scars, not his face. The ones that continued, past his jaw, down his neck, across his left shoulder, and down his side. The ones that most people had the courtesy to pretend not to notice, which was its own kind of cruelty. He felt the old reflex, the impulse to turn away, to make some deflecting remark, to fill the space with something that was not this. "They are not." He started. "They are part of you," she said. "And you are." She stopped. Something shifted. "You are not what I expected when I came to this gate." "What did you expect?" "Someone doing a favor," she said. "Someone being kind in the particular way that keeps distance between the kindness and the person receiving it. And instead," she looked at, instead, she said, "someone who ran through a storm and threw himself into the mud to save a woman who was doing something foolish with a chicken." "The chicken was a factor," he said. "The chicken was not the factor," she said. The stove crackled. Outside, the rain came in waves against the glass. He walked toward her. "Wren, what happened out there?" "Don't," she said. "Not sharp. Careful. Don't make it smaller than it is." He stopped. "It is not smaller than it is," he said. She looked at him. "I have been trying," she said, "to be careful. About this, about what this is and what it is not. Because I came here with nothing, and you gave me a roof and I did not want to." She stopped. "I did not want to confuse gratitude with something else." "Is it something else?" he said. She was quiet for a moment. "The lamp flame moved in the draft under the door, I think," she said slowly, "that it may have been something else for a while now. And I was calling it gratitude, because that was the safer name for it." He did not speak. "The stones," she said. He blinked. "What?" "The bowl of stones on the windowsill. You were going to ask about them, I could tell. Every morning for 2 weeks, I was not Cole." "Yes. They are from the creek near where my father is buried," she said. "I carried them in my bundle when I left, so I would have something of the place where he is." She looked at the window. "I put them there because it was the first place in this house that felt like it might be allowed to be mine." He looked at her. "Everything in this house," he said, "is allowed to be yours." She turned back to him, and something in her face did what faces do when a person has been carrying something alone for long enough and someone has just offered to help carry it, not broken, not collapsed, just eased, I think, she said quietly, "that my father knew exactly what he was doing. Your father always knew what he was doing. He was insufferable about it." "Yes," Cole said. "He was," she smiled. "The real one. The one that reached her eyes and changed her whole face." And he realized, standing in his own kitchen, in a soaked shirt with the rain fighting the windows, and a chicken behind the wood box, that this was the moment he had been walking toward for 3 weeks, without knowing what direction he was headed. That evening, the door on the left side of the hallway did not close all the way, and neither of them mentioned the bolt. Morning came clean. The storm had left its mark. A section of barn roof gone, 2 fence sections down, 4 hens that had not made it through the night. Cole went out before first light to assess the damage. The juniper branch was enormous in the daylight, lying across the yard like a fallen building. He stood and looked at it for a long time. He kept thinking about 1 second, 1 step, 1 moment slower. He went back inside. Wren was already in the kitchen. She had seen the missing hens, and she stood in front of the coop with her arms wrapped around herself. Not performing grief. Just feeling it the way she felt things. Quietly, directly, without asking for an audience. "I am sorry," she said. "I was foolish. If I hadn't run out." "You saved 2 of them," Cole said. He came and stood behind her, put his hands on her shoulders. "More importantly, you are standing here." She leaned back against him. Just slightly. Just enough. They stood there, looking at the coop. "The branch would have fallen regardless," he said. "It was dead wood. It was going to come down in the first serious storm. You know that is not the point I was making." "I know," he said. "But it is still true." She turned around and looked at him. Looked at him the way she looked at the scars. Like she was reading something and intended to understand it fully before she moved on. "Thank you," she said. "For what you did. You do not need to thank me for that." "I know I do not need to," she said. "I want to." "Those are different things," he nodded. She turned back to the yard. "We have a lot of work," she said. "We do. We should start." Yes. Neither of them moved for another moment. Then they both moved at the same time and went to work. On the 11th day, which felt now like it belonged to a different version of both of them, she had touched the scar in the barn with 2 careful fingers and looked at it the way she looked at the land when she was trying to understand it. That had been the beginning. The storm had been something else entirely. And now the morning after the storm had its own quality. A steadiness. Not the careful distance of the first weeks. Not the charged uncertainty of the night before. Something that had settled. Sebastian Pryor came that afternoon. He rode in on the roan he had owned for 11 years and tied it at the post with the efficiency of a man who has visited often enough to do it without thinking. He looked at the fallen branch. He looked at the roof section. He looked at Cole, and then at Wren, and then at the way Cole's hand went to the small of her back when they walked across the yard, together, briefly, without Cole seeming to notice he was doing it. Sebastian noticed. He said nothing about it. He had news that he wore on his face before he opened his mouth. "Beckett," he said. "He has moved." Cole went still. "What has he done?" "Filed with the county." Sebastian accepted the coffee Wren handed him, without breaking his sentence. "Questioning the validity of your marriage. Claims it was entered into under economic duress. Claims Wren had no real choice and therefore no real consent." The kitchen was quiet. "If he gets a sympathetic ear," Sebastian said, "he could make an argument that the marriage is voidable. And if the marriage is voidable, Wren's standing in any legal proceeding goes with it." Cole looked at Wren. Her face was very still. "He has thought about this," she said. "He has thought about everything," Sebastian said. "That is what makes him dangerous. He does not move until he has seen the angles." "What angles does he think he has?" Cole said. "The banknote, the marriage challenge, and—" Sebastian paused. "I heard from a man at the land office this morning. Someone was asking about this property. Asking specific questions about the note and the payment schedule." "Someone," Wren said. "Someone who works for Beckett," Sebastian said. The same man who was at the Morrison place before they lost the South 40. Silence. Cole set his coffee down. How long do we have, he said. Before the bank, 22 days, Sebastian said, and the circuit judge, 31. 9 days. 9 days between the bank deadline and the judge's arrival. We need the other families, Wren said. Both men looked at her. Beckett has done this before, she said. Not just us. Not just lent the land from Broken Ash. He has done this pattern, the note adjustment, the pressure, the quiet removal, with other people in this valley. If we find them, if we connect them, then this is not one couple and one document. She looked at Cole. This is a pattern in front of a judge who has seen patterns before. Sebastian looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Cole. She is right, he said. She usually is, Cole said. Wren looked at the table. Somewhere behind her eyes, something that had been carrying a name like gratitude or arrangement or practical circumstances was quietly revising its label. Then we have 22 days, she said. And a lot of writing to do, Cole said. And a lot of writing to do, she agreed. Sebastian drank his coffee. Outside, the wind was still moving through the repaired fence sections, and the wheat in the east field was bending in the last of the storm's breath, and the juniper tree stood without its fallen branch, like something that has survived something, and intends to continue. Lark appeared at the kitchen door. He had spent the morning clearing the branch from the yard without being asked. He looked at the three of them around the table. Tell me what you need, he said. Cole looked at him. A fast horse and a week, he said. Lark sat down. Then let's start, he said. And they did. 10 days, that was what they had. 10 days to build something solid enough that a circuit judge could not ignore it. 10 days before the bank deadline hit like a second storm. 10 days of writing, knocking on doors, sitting at kitchen tables, with people who had their own reasons to be afraid. Cole went first alone, because that was what the first knock required. A man. A white man with a name on a deed, and a note at the bank, and a face people in this valley had seen before. Not a face they had always welcomed, but a known face, which was different from a trusted face, but it was a start. The Branagh place was 7 miles southeast. Patrick Branagh was in his 60s, Irish-born. Had been in the territory since 1863, and had the look of a man who had survived enough to become suspicious of anything that looked like help. He stood in his doorway and looked at Cole for a long moment. The North Farm man, he said. Cole Harlan, I know who you are. He did not move from the doorway. What do you want? Cole told him. Not all of it, the outline. Beckett, the pattern, the document. The circuit judge coming in 31 days. Branagh listened without expression. When Cole finished, Branagh was quiet for a long time. Then he said, 3 years ago. He adjusted my note terms. Middle of a drought. Said it was standard bank practice. Said I'd signed the amendment. A pause. I did not sign any amendment. Do you have the original note? Branagh looked at him. I have everything, he said. I have kept everything since the day I filed on this land. He stood aside from the doorway. Come in, he said, and tell me what you need. Nettie Orr was a widow of 63 who lived alone on a small homestead 8 miles north. She met Cole at her gate with a rifle resting in the crook of her arm, not raised. Just present. Mrs. Orr, Cole said. Harlan, she said. She had heard of him. Most people in the valley had heard of him. The scar, the North Farm, the Apache wife, which was the newest thing they had heard. I am not here to trouble you, he said. Nobody ever comes to trouble me, she said. They always come for some other reason, and the trouble follows them in, fair, he said. I will try to leave the trouble at the gate. She looked at him. What do you want? He told her. Her expression did not change while he spoke. It had the quality of a woman who had spent 63 years deciding how much of what she actually thought to show, and had arrived at a very efficient answer. When he finished, she said, the interest rate on my note changed after my husband died. Doubled. Hup. I asked the bank for the document showing the change. They sent me a paper. My husband's signature was on it. A pause. My husband had been dead for 4 months when that paper was dated. Cole said nothing. I kept that paper, she said. I kept it because I did not know what to do with it. But I knew enough to know it was something. She lifted the rifle out of the crook of her arm, set it against the fence post. Come in, she said. I have coffee. The Pruitt brothers were harder. Dustin and Cal. Mid-40s both. They had worked their land together since their father left it to them. And they were the kind of men who did not trust easily and did not change their minds often. Dustin met Cole at the edge of the property. We heard you married the Apache girl, he said. I married Ren Ruda, Cole said. Yes. Dustin looked at him. Tomas Ruda's daughter. Yes. A long pause. Something shifted in Dustin's expression. Tomas Ruda fixed my father's wagon. Once, he said. Would not take payment. Said my father had given his people permission to camp near the South Creek one winter, and that was payment enough. He looked at the road behind Cole. My father talked about it for years. Cole waited. What do you need? Dustin said. By the end of 10 days, they had 6 families, 6 sets of records, 6 different variations of the same pressure, different amounts, different methods, different years, but the same hand behind all of it and the same shape to every story, the quiet adjustment, the altered document, the note that changed terms when the person was most vulnerable and least able to fight back. Cole brought the records home each evening. Ren organized them. She spread them across the kitchen table with the focused precision of someone who had grown up watching her father keep records of the things that mattered. She wrote notes in the margins. She connected dates. She found the pattern that each individual story could not see in itself because each person had only their own story. Together, the stories made something else. Together, they made a map. Lark sat at the edge of the table and watched her work. My father taught her this, he said to Cole. Quiet, not to Ren. He said the most dangerous thing a person can do is keep careful records. Because the people who want to take from you are counting on you, not having any. Cole looked at Ren's handwriting, moving across the margin of Nettie Orr's mortgage document. He taught her well, he said. He taught her everything, Lark said. And then, after a pause, she taught me most of what I know. Cole looked at him. Lark did not look away. It was the closest thing to thank you for being here that either of them was going to say, which was fine. Cole understood the language of things not quite said. He had been speaking it his whole life. The night before they were going to ride to Millhaven, to file with Judge Harrow's clerker, Cole woke at 2 a.m. Old instinct. The kind that lives below thought. The house was right. The sounds were right. But something outside was not. He was on his feet before he was fully awake, pulled on his boots, took the rifle from beside the bedroom door. Ren was awake. She had heard it too. She was already sitting up. I'll go, he said. She opened her mouth. I do not know how many there are, he said. I need you here in case something goes wrong. I need someone who knows what to do. She looked at him. This was the calculation she made in 3 seconds, the one that weighed her instinct to come against the practicality of what he was saying. She reached under the bed, pulled out the short-barrel shotgun they had moved there. After the night, Lark told them about Beckett's plans. If you are not back in 10 minutes, she said. I am coming. 15, he said. 10, she said. He went. The barn light where there should not be light. Moving light. The kind a lantern makes in a man's hand. Cole went around the long way, along the back fence, through the shadow of the chicken coop. 3 men. He could see them through the gap in the barn boards. 2 he did not know. Big men. The kind hired for a specific kind of work and paid not to think about it. The third was Deke Farrow. Cole knew him, young man. 28. Did odd jobs around Calder Springs. Had the permanent expression of someone who needed money badly enough to not ask what the job was before saying yes. They had a can of kerosene. They were working along the base of the barn's east wall. Cole did not call out first. He got close enough that calling out would leave them nowhere useful to go. Then he said, "Put it down." All three froze. The two big men looked at each other, at the rifle. At each other again they ran, just like that. The calculation took half a second, and they were gone into the dark, and Cole let them go because they were not the one he needed. Deke Farrow did not run. He stood with the kerosene can in his hand and looked at Cole with the expression of a man who had known, somewhere underneath the decision, that this would not end well, and had made the decision anyway because the alternative looked worse. "Cole," he said. "Deke, this is not." He stopped. Started again. He said no one would be hurt. "The horses are in that barn," Cole said. "The cattle. The feed for the whole winter." Deke looked at the can in his hand. He said if the barn burned, you would not have the assets to cover the banknote. He said you would have to sell. He said it would be done before the judge arrived, and no one would connect it to him. He was going to let you burn livestock and call it an accident. Deke put the can down. Set it down carefully, like it was something that might still go wrong. "He hasn't paid me yet," Deke said. He said after. "That is because after is when he would have leverage over you," Cole said. "A man who watched a barn burn does not get to walk away from the man who paid him. He gets to be useful for the next thing, and the next thing, and the thing after that." Deke stared at the can on the ground. Cole lowered the rifle, slightly. "Not all the way. I need something from you," he said. Deke looked up. "Write down what he told you, all of it, the instructions, the amount he promised, when and where he spoke to you. Everything. And then what happens to me. And then you get to have not burned down a man's barn," Cole said. "Which is a better version of tonight than the one you were heading toward." Deke was quiet. Then he sat down on the ground next to the kerosene can, in the dirt, in the dark, and held out his hand. "Give me something to write on," he said. Wren appeared at the barn door at the 9-minute mark, shotgun in hand, hair loose, the flannel shirt and her boots, and the expression of a woman who had decided the 10-minute agreement was optimistic. She looked at Deke Farrow, sitting on the ground, writing his statement by lantern light. She looked at Cole. "You're 3 seconds early," he said. "You said 15, she said. I said 10. "We compromised at 12. That is not what compromise means. I know what compromise means." Lark materialized from the shadow on the other side of the barn, because of course he did. "I saw the men leave," he said. "I know which direction." Cole looked at him. "In the morning," Cole said. "Tonight we have what we need." Lark looked at Deke Farrow and his statement, nodded once, then disappeared back into the dark the way he had come from, which was quietly and without drama, which was simply how Lark moved through the world. Wren watched him go. "Did you know he was out there?" Cole asked. "I suspected," she said. "You did not tell me. You did not ask." He looked at her. She looked back at him with the expression of someone who is not apologizing, but is also not apologizing. "Come inside," he said. "We have a long day tomorrow." She came inside, and Deke Farrow wrote every word Beckett had said to him, in careful, slow, thorough handwriting. Like a man making a record of the thing he almost did, and is choosing, in the end, not to have done. They rode to Millhaven in the morning, Cole and Wren and Sebastian and Lark. 4 horses on the road before first light. The sky pale and cold, October giving way to November at the edges. They filed with Judge Harrow's clerk at 9 in the morning. The clerk, a young man named Finch, who seemed vaguely alarmed by the size of the folder they set on his desk, accepted the documents, logged them, stamped them, and told them the hearing would be scheduled within the week, which meant 9 days. 9 days before the bank deadline close. Too close. But there. Except the hearing itself was not scheduled for 9 days. It was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Judge Harrow's circuit ran on his time, not the bank's. Finch explained it with the apologetic efficiency of a man who has delivered bad news before and has learned to do it quickly. The judge would arrive when he arrived. The filing was accepted. The date was set. which left them 14 days past the bank deadline. Sebastian handled it. He went to the bank manager himself. Not as a friend, not as a neighbor, but as a man who had once been a judge and still knew how to walk into a room like one. He laid out what had been filed, what it meant, what it would mean for the bank if they moved against a property that was currently the subject of a territorial fraud investigation. The bank manager asked for 2 weeks. Sebastian said 3. They settled on 3. On the way home, Wren rode beside Cole on the road above the canyon. The red rock walls caught the afternoon light and threw it back warmer than it had any right to be. "Do you think he knows?" she said. "He will know by tomorrow," Cole said. "Someone at the clerk's office will carry the news. What does he do when he knows? He decides whether to fight it or fold. He will fight it," she said. "Yes, he has the bank on his side. He has the bank manager on his side," Cole said. "The bank itself does not care who owns the deed. It just wants the note paid." Wren was quiet. "If he challenges the marriage," she said. "At the hearing, then we answer it." How Cole looked at the road. "The truth," he said. "That is all we have." "And it is enough," she looked at him. "You are very certain?" "No," he said. "I am choosing to act certain, which is not the same thing. But it is what we have." She was quiet for a mile. Then she said, "My father used to say that the most honest thing a person can do is act as if the right outcome is possible, even when you do not know. Because if you act as if it is not, you have already decided." "Your father," Cole said, "was a very wise man." "He was," she said, "and he is currently being very smug about all of this from wherever he is." Cole glanced at her. She was looking at the road ahead, but there was something at the corner of her mouth, and he thought, there it is, the thing that had been coming since the night of the storm. The thing that lived in the way she said his name now, and the way his hand went to the small of her back without him deciding to, and the way the house had stopped, feeling like a place he was waiting in. The thing that had a name, and he was going to say it soon. Not yet, but soon. The morning before the hearing, Mrs. Aldous came. Cole was in the barn. Wren was in the kitchen. The sound of a buggy on the road drew her to the window. A small buggy. Single horse. Driven by a woman in a plain gray coat. Wren went still. She recognized the horse before she recognized the woman, Mrs. Aldous, 52 years old. Widow. Owner of the largest house on Calder Springs, Main Street. The woman who had called Wren into the parlor in front of 2 other women and said the watch was missing, and that Wren was the only one who had been in the room. The woman who had said she had found it in Wren's apron pocket. Wren stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then she walked out the front door. Mrs. Aldous stopped the buggy at the gate. She did not get out immediately. She sat with the reins in her hands and looked at Wren across the yard, with the expression of someone who has been building toward something for a long time, and has now arrived, and is not sure the preparation was sufficient. "Mrs. Harlan," she said. "Mrs. Aldous," Wren said. Pause. "I would like to speak with you," Mrs. Aldous said. "If you will allow it." Wren opened the gate. She did not smile. She did not make it easy. But she opened the gate, and they went inside. Cole came in from the barn 20 minutes later. He found Wren at the table, alone. In front of her was a leather satchel he had not seen before. She looked up when he came in. Her face was doing the complicated thing. The thing it did when she was holding several truths at once and deciding how to arrange them. "She was here," he said. "She was here. What did she say?" Wren looked at the satchel. "She never found the watch in my apron," she said. She did not lie because she wanted to. She lied because Beckett told her to. A pause. He held her husband's debts. He came to her house 3 times, in the year before she dismissed me. The last time, he told her that if she wanted to keep her house, she would find a reason to let me go. "Because you overheard something," Cole said. "Because I overheard him say the name Broken Ash and a price. $35. In her parlor, Wren's hands were flat on the table. I did not know what it meant at the time. I had never heard Broken Ash's name connected to a sale. But Beckett did not know that I did not know. He assumed I understood what I had heard, and he could not risk it. He could not risk it, she said. So she dismissed me. Said I stole the watch to give people a reason to not believe anything I might say. A breath. She has felt ill about it ever since. She said she told herself it was the only choice she had. But she kept copies. Cole looked at the satchel. Every document he brought to her house, Wren said. Every paper he wanted her to sign, every record of every conversation that touched on anything legal. She opened the satchel and set 3 folders on the table. She kept them because she was afraid of him. But she kept them because some part of her knew that a person who has no record has no voice. Like Tomas, Cole thought, like father, like daughter. Wren looked at the folders. Why now? Cole said. Ed, why did she come now? She heard about the night at the barn, Wren said. She heard Beckett had sent men to burn it. Her eyes came up to his. She said she had been afraid of him for 2 years. And then she heard what he was willing to do, and she understood that her fear was not making her safe. It was just making her useful to him. Cole sat down. He looked at the folders. Then he looked at Wren. Your father was right, he said. About keeping records. He was right about many things, she said. It is very irritating, and there it was. The corner of her mouth. The thing that came before a smile on a person who did not give smiles easily. Cole reached across the table and covered her hand with his. She turned her hand over and held his. They sat like that for a moment. In the kitchen that had stopped feeling like his kitchen and started feeling like theirs. With the folders of evidence on the table and the hearing tomorrow. And everything that was about to happen. We have enough, she said. We have enough, he said. We have more than enough. Yes. A pause. Cole? Yes. Whatever happens tomorrow, she looked at their hands. I want you to know that whatever happens, this has been. She stopped, started again. I did not expect this, any of this, not the farm, not you, not. She stopped again. Wren, he said. She looked up. I love you, he said, just like that. No build-up, no speech, no careful arrangement of words that kept safe distance between the meaning and the saying. Just those 3 words. Her eyes went wide, then they filled, just at the edges. Just enough. I have been trying, she said carefully, not to say that first. Because I came here with nothing and you gave me everything and I did not want you to think it was gratitude, he said. I was going to say confusion, she said. But yes, that. Is it? She looked at him. No, she said. It is not. Then say it, he said. She looked at their hands. I love you, she said. Quiet. Certain. The way she said everything that mattered. Without performance, without hedging, direct, final, true. He brought her hand up and held it against his chest for a moment. And the kitchen was very quiet. And outside, the last of the November light was going gold across the wheat field. And somewhere in the territory, Judge Harrow's clerk was organizing folders for the morning. And Tomas Reda had been right about absolutely everything, and was, without question, being entirely insufferable about it from wherever he was. But tomorrow was still tomorrow, and Beckett was still Beckett. And the folders on the table were still the only thing standing between this farm and everything they had built together. So they slept. And in the morning, they got up and went to fight for it. The morning of the hearing, cold, clear. The kind of December morning that the territory does occasionally, where the air is so sharp and blue that everything in it looks more true than usual. They rode to Millhaven together, Cole and Wren, Sebastian, Lark, and behind them in 2 wagons the Brannoggs and Neddy Orr and the Pruitt brothers and the Morrison family, who had come 3 counties over because they had heard. The way news travels between people who have been hurt by the same hand, that something was finally being said. Cole had not expected the wagons. He had asked these people for their records, for their testimony. He had not asked them to come. They came anyway. Patrick Branagh pulled his wagon alongside Cole's horse near the edge of town. Did not ask us to come, he said. No, Cole said. We came anyway. I can see that. Branagh looked straight ahead. Tomas Rueda fixed my father's wagon once. Would not take anything for it. A pause. My father said he was the most decent man he had met in the territory. Another pause. I think Harlan married the right woman. He drove the wagon forward before Cole could answer. Wren, riding beside Cole, had heard all of it. She did not say anything. But she sat straighter. The Millhaven Courthouse was a two-story wooden building that had been many things before it was a courthouse, and would probably be many things after. Judge Harrow held circuit hearings in the main room on the ground floor, which had 12 chairs, a raised desk, and windows that let in too much light in the afternoon, and not enough in the morning. It was morning. Beckett was already there. He had two lawyers, both from outside the territory, men with city suits, and the confidence of people who charge by the hour and have never lost a case they could afford to win. He sat at the respondent's table with his silver hair and his expensive coat, and the posture of a man who has surveyed the situation and found it manageable, until Cole and Wren walked in. And behind them, Sebastian, and behind Sebastian, Lark, which itself was a moment, because a young Chiricahua Apache man walking calmly into a territorial courthouse in 1880 was not a common sight, and Beckett's lawyers noticed it. And behind Lark, Patrick Branagh, Nettie Orr, the Pruitt brothers, the Morrisons, and behind them, the two Chiricahua elders, who had made the journey from 3 days' ride away because Lark had asked them to, and because they were old enough to understand that some things you do not do for yourself, but for the people who come after. Beckett looked at the room filling up behind Cole and Wren, and for the first time, something shifted in his face. Not much, just a tightening around the eyes. The expression of a man who has played the same hand many times and is now looking at a table where the cards are arranged differently than he expected. Cole saw it, and he understood what it meant. Beckett had counted on each person being alone. He had built his whole system on the isolation of individuals, each family in their own trouble, each person carrying their own story, with no way to see that it connected to anyone else's. He had not counted on a woman who organized records the way her father had taught her. He had not counted on what happened when people who had all been told they were alone found out they were not. Judge Harrow was 61, gray-bearded, and moved with the deliberate economy of a man who has long since stopped wasting energy on things that do not matter. He had been riding circuit through New Mexico and Arizona territory for 22 years. He had heard almost everything. He sat down, looked at the room, looked at the two tables, looked at the people behind Cole and Wren. He did not comment on the Chiricahua elders. He did not comment on the unusual size of the gathering. He picked up the first folder from Finch's stack and opened it. "We'll proceed," he said. "Counsel for the respondent may be seated." The first 2 hours were documents. Cole had expected this. Legal proceedings in 1880 moved through paper first. The Broken Ash transfer, the original deed conditions, the chain of acquisition. Beckett's lawyers objected to the introduction of Apache or oral testimony regarding Broken Ash's mental state at the time of signing. Harrow looked at them. "I'll hear it," he said. "Objection overruled," Lark translated. The elder who spoke first was a man named Gray Hawk, not the Gray Hawk from the deed, but a man who had taken the name in memory of him, a practice Cole had not known about but found, when Wren explained it quietly beside him, exactly the kind of thing that deserved remembering. He was perhaps 70. He sat straight. He spoke slowly, in Chiricahua, and Lark's translation followed each sentence with precision. He described Broken Ash in the last years of his life. The confusion. The long silences followed by sudden conviction that he was somewhere else. The mornings he woke, calling for his wife, who had been dead for 15 years. The afternoon a passing group of men sat him down and put a pen in his hand, and he signed his name because someone asked him to, the way he would have signed anything, because signing things meant nothing to him by then. "A man like that," Greyhawk said. could not give what he did not know he had. The courtroom was quiet. Beckett's lawyers conferred. The second elder was a woman. Wren did not translate her name publicly. She explained quietly to Cole that the woman had chosen to give only her ceremonial name in this setting, which was her right. She corroborated everything Greyhawk had said and added the specific detail that Beckett had been present. That he had spoken English quickly, which the elder did not speak well at the time. That he had directed Broken Ash's hand to the line. One of Beckett's lawyers stood up. "Your Honor, we object to characterizations of—" "Sit down," Harrow said. The lawyer sat down. Then came Nettie Orr's forged signature. Then the Branna note amendment. Then the Morrison terms change. Then Dake Farrow's written statement, read aloud by Finch in his careful clerk's voice, describing in plain language what Beckett had instructed him to do, and what he had been promised, and where they had met, and what had been said. Then Mrs. Aldous' folders, which were, as Wren had said, more than enough. Beckett's lawyers made their arguments. They were good arguments, well constructed. The kind that would have worked in a different room, with a different judge and a different set of people sitting behind the claimant's table. But they were built for a situation where each story stood alone. They were not built for what was in this room, and Judge Harrow, who had spent 22 years hearing both kinds of argument, knew the difference. When the lawyers finished, Harrow looked at his notes for a moment. Then he looked up. "Counsel," he said, "before I rule, I have a question for your client." Beckett's lead lawyer started to rise. "For your client," Harrow said. Directly, a pause. Beckett stood. He was still composed. Still the posture. Still the coat. But the eyes were different now. The calculation behind them was running different numbers than it had been running. "Mr. Beckett," Harrow said, "in 1861, when you witnessed the signature of a man named Broken Ash on a land transfer document, did you have knowledge of that man's mental and cognitive state at the time?" Silence, the kind of silence that has weight. "I understood him to be a representative of his band," Beckett said carefully. "That is not what I asked." Longer silence. "I was aware," Beckett said, "that he was elderly. Were you aware that he was cognitively impaired?" Beckett's lawyer put a hand on his arm. Beckett did not look at the lawyer. He looked at Harrow, and then he looked, for just a moment, at the two Chiricahua elders sitting behind Cole and Wren. And whatever calculation he was running hit a number it had not expected. He sat down. He said very quietly to his lawyer, "We're done. The ruling took 20 minutes." Harrow wrote quickly. Finch organized. The lawyers conferred in low voices that gradually quieted as it became clear that the conferring was not going to change the outcome. When Harrow read it aloud, the room was completely still. The Broken Ash transfer of 1861, void. The signer lacked legal capacity to enter into the agreement. The transfer is hereby declared invalid and the land reverts to its original status. All collateral arrangements derived from that transfer, void. All banknote adjustments made under the influence of collateral pressure from the Arizona Land and Commerce Company, subject to review and returned to their original terms pending audit. The marriage of Cole Harlan and Wren Ruta Harlan, valid and legally sound. No evidence of coercion. Substantial evidence of a relationship entered into willingly by both parties and developed in good faith. Wren let out a breath. Cole felt it beside him. The long breath of someone who has been holding something in for long enough. He took her hand. She held it. Patrick Branna, sitting 2 rows back, said something in Irish that Cole did not understand, but which sounded like the kind of thing you say when something that should have happened a long time ago finally happens. Nettie Orr pressed her lips together and did not cry, but came close enough that it counted. Lark sat very still. Then he looked at the elders and said something in Chiricahua, and the elder who had taken Greyhawk's name nodded once slowly with the expression of a man who has waited long enough and has now seen enough. Beckett stood. He straightened his coat. He looked at the room. And Cole watched him do the thing that powerful men do when they finally understand that a room is no longer afraid of them. The adjustment. Not dramatic. Just the face reorganizing itself around information it did not want. The slow revision of a man who has built his whole life on the assumption that other people's silence was permanent. He looked at Cole, then at Wren. He said nothing. He picked up his hat. He walked out. His lawyers followed, the door closed, and the room exhaled. Outside the courthouse, in the cold December noon, Sebastian Pryor shook Cole's hand with both of his and did not say anything for a moment, because the moment did not need words. Then he said, "Your mother would be proud," and then, quieter, "Tomas would be, too." Cole nodded, because there was nothing better to say than that. Lark came and stood beside Wren. They spoke in Apache for a moment. Quiet, private. Cole did not try to hear it. It was not his. Then Lark looked at Cole. "The elders want to camp near the South Creek for the winter," he said. "With your permission." "They do not need my permission for that," Cole said. "That creek has been theirs longer than this farm has been mine." Lark was quiet for a moment. "Thank you," he said. Just like that. 2 words from a young man who had been watching Cole for months and keeping his ledger and had now made his entry. Cole nodded. Nettie Orr appeared at his elbow and pressed a jar of something into his hands. "Preserved peaches," she said. "I had a good year for peaches. It seemed like the right thing to bring." He looked at the jar. "Thank you, Mrs. Orr, Nettie," she said. "I think we are past Mrs. Orr." Patrick Branna shook his hand again. The Pruitt brothers did the same, and Cole stood in the cold December noon outside a courthouse in Millhaven with a jar of preserved peaches and the papers that had just given his farm back, and looked at Wren. She was standing a few feet away, talking to the elder woman, the one whose ceremonial name had not been spoken publicly. They were speaking quietly. The elder had her hand on Wren's arm. "Whatever," she said, made Wren close her eyes for a moment, then open them again. Then look up at the mountains to the north. The ones her father had faced when they placed him. She said something back. Quiet and certain. The elder nodded, and Wren turned and looked at Cole across the small cold space between them, and he thought, not for the first time, and not for the last. "Tomas, Rita, you knew exactly what you were doing." They rode home in the late afternoon, just the 2 of them. Sebastian had gone ahead, saying he needed to see a man about a fence post, which was probably not true, and was definitely a way of giving them the road to themselves. Lark had gone south with the elders. The territory opened up around them as they rode. Red rock and pale sky and the long shadows of December reaching across the dust. "What did she say?" Cole said. "The elder." Wren looked at the road. "She said my father spoke of me to their band," she said, "for years. She said he described me as..." She paused. She said the word in Chiricahua. It means something like the one who holds the thread when others have dropped it. She was quiet. "He never called me that to my face," she said. "He would have been too proud." "He was proud of you," Cole said. "I know it from everything he said about you." "He would not have..." He stopped. "He would not have trusted just anyone with what he trusted you with." She nodded. They rode a while without speaking. The farm appeared over the rise in the distance. The old red barn, the house, the wheat field bronze in the late light, the juniper tree throwing its long shadow across the yard. "Home, Cole," she said. "Yes. Last night when you said..." She stopped. "I meant it," he said. "I know you meant it." She looked at him. "I wanted to say it properly, without the hearing in front of us and all the rest. I wanted to say it when it was just this." She gestured at the road, the light, the 2 horses on the empty road. "Just this," she said. "I love you, and I would have loved you, even if we had lost today. I want you to know that." He looked at her. At the woman who had stood at his gate with everything she owned in a cloth bundle and had gone from there to this, to sitting beside him on a road in December, with the farm over the rise and their whole life in front of them. "I know," he said. "Good." she said. Good, he said. They rode the last mile home in the kind of quiet that does not need filling. Winter settled in. December. January. The farm quieter than the rest of the year, but not empty. Never empty anymore. The barn roof was repaired. Sebastian helped, and so did Lark, when he came back from the south, with the news that the elders were well, and the band had made camp near the creek, and that the territorial administration, perhaps having heard something about the Millhaven hearing, had quietly withdrawn the papers regarding their classification, quietly, without acknowledgement, which was fine. The result was the result. Beckett sold what he could sell. He was gone from the territory before February. No announcement, no confrontation. One morning his house in Calder Springs had a for sale card in the window, and by the end of the month it was sold to a family from Ohio who seemed confused about why they were getting such a good price actus. The bank audit took 2 months. At the end of it, Nettie Orr's interest rate was corrected, and 6 years of overpayment was returned to her account. The Brannoggs got their amendment voided. The Pruitts got a formal apology from the bank manager, who had himself been a victim of Beckett's particular form of leverage, and was now, with that leverage removed, a different kind of man. Cole's note went back to its original terms. He paid it down through the winter, steadily, without drama. The farm kept going. By March, the garden was Wren's in every way that mattered. She had drawn her plan for it over the winter on the back of a piece of old paperwork, in careful charcoal lines, with notes in the margins that were half English and half the Apache notation her father had taught her, which had no alphabet but had a precise logic Cole was slowly learning to read. Come March. The plan became ground. She worked every morning. He came by in the afternoons, when the field work allowed and found things to do nearby that put him in the same space without intruding on hers. She noticed. She did not say anything about it, but she started leaving his coffee at the edge of the garden plot when she brought it out in the morning, which meant she had accounted for him being there, which was its own kind of statement. A morning in April, the light coming in at the angle that April has. Warmer now. The wheat in the east field showing green at the edges where it had been brown all winter. Cole was checking the south fence line, the one that was always fine, the one he checked anyway. He came back across the yard and saw Wren standing in the garden, still, her hand resting against her stomach, not as if she was in pain. The other kind of still. The kind that means something has been understood. Wren, he said. She turned. Her face was doing all of it at once. The complicated thing. Except this time all the layers were pointing the same direction. She walked to him, took his hand, placed it where hers had been. We're going to have a baby, she said. The yard was very quiet. The wind moved through the new wheat at the field's edge. A bird somewhere behind the barn called once and was quiet. Cole stood completely still. And then he did the thing he could not have predicted himself doing 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 8 months ago, when he had ridden back from checking an est fence lines and found a woman standing at his gate with red eyes and a cloth bundle. He picked her up, both arms around her, lifting her off the ground. She laughed, surprised first, then real. The kind of laugh that comes when a feeling is too large for a face and has to find somewhere else to go. He set her down. He was not entirely. His voice came out differently than intended. I love you, he said. I love both of you. I love this. She pressed her hand to his face, against the scar on his left cheek, against the pale, jagged line that had been the reason the world had kept its distance from him for 4 years. Against the mark that she had touched for the first time in the barn on the 11th day and had called, without hesitation, part of him, my father, she said, was even more right than he knew. He was right about everything, Cole said. Not everything. She looked at him. He said he was not asking you to love me. He was wrong about that, Cole said. Yes, she said. He was wrong about that. And she was smiling now, the full one. the one that reached her eyes and changed her whole face. He would be insufferable about this, she said. He planned every part of it, Cole said. He has earned it, Wren laughed. The kind that has some crying in it, which is not sadness exactly, but is the feeling of loving someone who is no longer here to be told that they were right. Thank you, she said, quietly. Not to Cole, to the mountains to the north. To a man who had come down from a ridge once and found a stranger lying in the dirt and decided, without ceremony, to do the thing that needed doing. That evening, Cole built the bench. He had been planning it for weeks. A wooden bench set at the edge of the yard under the juniper tree. The tree that had nearly taken her from him and had been standing here longer than anyone on this land could account for. It was not a fancy bench, but it was solid and it would last. He carved their initials into the back of it before the wood dried. C and W, intertwined, simple, without decoration. The kind of mark that does not need explaining. They sat on it that evening as the light went out of the sky. Lark was on the ground nearby, working on a piece of tack with the focused quiet that was simply his way of existing in a space. He had come back a week ago and had not left again, and had stopped explaining himself about it. Sebastian came around the side of the house with his pipe and stood looking at the wheat field with the expression of a man who is thinking about many things and has decided to think about them here. The sky went from blue to gold to the deep color that the territory saves for its best evenings. Wren leaned her head against Cole's shoulder. She spoke quietly, not to him, not to any of them, to the north, to the mountains, to the place where a man who had sat under this tree and talked for 2 hours and gone home without saying he was sick, was whatever he was now. Thank you, Father, she said. You were right. Cole put his arm around her. His hand rested over hers, over the place where a new life was beginning, over the ground that was going to hold another person's beginning the way this land had held his own, with patience and without judgment, and with the fairness of something that only asks whether you are willing to work. He looked out at the wheat field, at the old red barn, at the fence lines that were finally all repaired, at the bench he had built and the tree above it and the sky going dark beyond the mountains. He had come to this territory with $43 and a horse and a stubbornness he had never been able to locate the bottom of. He had lost his face and found the farm. He had lost his mother and learned to endure. He had lost his solitude and found this, the man he had been before, standing alone in the quiet of an empty house, might not have recognized the shape of the life he was inside now, might have thought it was too much, too loud, too full of other people's breathing and herb bundles drying from the rafters and creek stones on the windowsill, and a 21-year-old Apache man who showed up to repair your fence without being asked. But the man he was now understood something that man had not. Enduring and living are not the same thing. Tomas Rada had said so, sitting under this tree. 4 months before he died, and he had been right about that, too. The lamp in the kitchen threw its small light through the window. The wheat field moved in the evening wind. And the north farm, his farm, their farm, the farm that has 4 years of silence, and 1 machine accident, and and 1 bank crisis, and 1 corrupt colonel, and 1 October afternoon when a woman appeared at a gate with red eyes, and everything she owned in a cloth bundle, breathed the way a place breathes when it is finally being properly lived in, fully, without reservation, without holding back.